and travel. And I'm sure we've all been in the car, and sometimes, well, certainly I have, and I'll sort of have a look and see the car driving next to me. I've seen cars driving next to me, and they've got sort of dogs in the passenger seat or whatever, and you always stop and have a look. And I like dogs myself, and it's always good to have a look. But there's other side to it too. I mean, obviously, there's a sort of warning and to make sure that the dog's safe, and obviously the passengers as well are. So we've got Dr. Scott Miller, who's a vet, TV as well. You may have seen him before as well. And Karen McDonald, who's the head of global relations at ROSPA. You're going to give an insight into some sort of research around safety. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on board. If you give us a bit of an insight in terms of what the research suggests and what people can take away from the findings, please.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, good. Hi there, Jimmy. So this Tavo Pet Survey is quite shocking because it's found that 59% of Brits travel with entirely unsecured animals in their car over the last 6 months. And even worse, 1 in 10 would suggest that the best place for their canine or feline companion is on their lap, which obviously is one of the most dangerous things, not only in the form of distracting drivers, but the potential injuries that can be suffered by the pets. And it's estimated that there's about 240,000 animals that are injured as a result of being involved in road traffic accidents inside the car annually. So it's not a small amount of numbers that are being injured as a result of people not securing their animals properly.
No, absolutely. The one that gets me, I was going to say, Dr. Scott, the one that sort of gets me before I sort of touch base with sort of Karen is whenever I see kind of a dog's head popping out the window type thing, and it kind of freaks me out, basically. I'm thinking, get your head back in the window. What's your take on that? I know it's sort of off piece, but we talk about on their lap and that sort of stuff. I mean, what should people take on board? I mean, surely, it's a bit of a worry if you've got like a dog kind of, popping their head out the window type thing. Goodness me, it could, it's a hazard, isn't it? Really.
It is. I mean, I think it's a hazard for the dog because, of course, there's that iconic vision, is there? Like you're in summer, you're going down the highway to the beach, and then you see a dog popping its head out the window, enjoying the wind, possibly with a pair of sunnies on. It's a great look. Don't get me wrong. But it's distracting for every driver seeing that dog, just as you were rubbernecking to see the dog. Potentially that's taking your eye off the road. It's also distracting for the drivers within the car, but it's not in the animal's best interest either, because I see a lot of eye injuries as a result of having things hit their eyes at speed. But then also just having their head out the window, it certainly can be, I think more than anything, it's a distraction for the owners. But with these results, I think it's very clear that on one hand, people can get fined for having their animals unrestrained, but I'd really like to draw the conversation towards the fact that it's unsafe for the animals. And so we do sort of need to come together. And it kind of reminds me of back in like the 70s and 80s, if you're a child of that generation, where you're like, oh, I've been introduced to this thing called a car seat. Oh, how amazing. And then you had to wear one, and then everyone sort of came around to the realization that actually, this is probably quite a lot safer than just sort of flying around in the car if you happen to hit something. And now I feel like we've sort of gone back to the beginning of the story when it comes to our pets. And when we value them as much as we do any other family member, then they deserve to have the same level of restraint.
No, absolutely. I can remember the seat belts being a thing too. There, absolutely. They were sort of coming into it. That sort of as well. Some people would drive. It's hard to believe now, but back then it wasn't always. As far I can't remember that far back, but I'm pretty sure I recall the seatbelts in the back not being as compulsory. But there we go. We'll digress. But what's your take on it, sort of, Karen? I mean, obviously, sort of like what are your thoughts around the research and some of the points that have been made there as well?
I think it's really important for everyone listening in just to remember that driving is a safety critical task every single time you get in the vehicle. So it's important to prepare to drive, and as you say, you've mentioned seat belts. Minimising distraction is fundamentally important. So ensuring that pets are safely secured in vehicles not only protects them and their passengers, but reduces the chances of a pet distracting the driver. And we know that driver distraction is a contributory factor in many collisions on our roads. So it's fundamentally important to prepare to drive, and pet restraints fit that preparing to drive conversation every journey, every day. It reduces the chance of serious injury, not only to the animals themselves, but to other occupants in the car.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The only thing I would say, sort of, Karen, I'm sort of guessing I'm not saying it's a good enough excuse, but I'm guessing there's people out there that sort of probably don't know type thing. They may have sort of like, a new pet type thing, and they want to transport maybe the pet on a day out, or, which is great to have the pet involved, have the dog involved, to maybe go to the beach, something like that type thing. And I mean, where can people go to get more information? I mean, like, I know it's not an excuse not to know, but there might be people out there that aren't quite sure. But what would you say? I mean, where can they sort of go to get more information, understand more about sort of how serious an issue it can be?
In terms of sorry,
Karen. I would just say the highway code is always there to be reviewed, as Karen, I'm sure, was just about to say. But about 13% from this survey said they had no understanding of it at all. So there are a number of ways you can restrain your animal. Obviously, a seatbelt, harness, a dog cage or a dog guard. I don't really like those ones because I still think they can rattle around within them. It might be safe for the other passengers, but not so safe for the dog. The pet carriers, of course, is the way to go. And so with this Tavo, it's the first pet protection system, and it's also been crash tested as well. So go into your local outlets and check it out, because it's a great bit of kit to keep your pet safe as you're travelling about.
Yeah, no, that's great information there. Sorry, Karen.
I've just thought it's interesting, to have some sort of facts that help these messages stick. I mentioned a few moments ago about the importance of thinking about the damage to other occupants as a consequence of not being restrained. Travelling at 30 mile an hour, an unrestrained pet could be thrown forward with a force of 30 to 60 times their own body weight. So that's going to cause damage to the pet itself and also other occupants in the vehicle. And so that's fundamentally important to reflect on. In terms of the highway code was mentioned. Within the highway code, there is a piece of information there that only 1 in 5 dog owners understand, that they don't have, that there is a requirement to suitably restrain an animal in a vehicle. So drivers are liable to face a fine if they fail to suitably restrain an animal in a vehicle. However, and this is where this piece of work is so important, about 13% of dog owners didn't understand that requirement, that highway code component. So fundamentally important to understand the impact on pets and other vehicle occupants as a consequence of them being unsecured.
No, absolutely. So making sure they're sort of clear on the highway code around sort of, transporting pets is imperative. And just sort of touching on what Dr. Scott mentioned there about the equipment at sort of health. I mean, what can you give us a bit more sort of details on that one there, in terms of like if maybe someone's sort of aware now, they've gone away, they've done this sort of research, and they're thinking, okay, well, maybe I could do with something that sort of can sort of reinforce it all. Is there any sort of information where they can go and sort of check that out, Dr. Scott, the equipment?
Absolutely. So it is the first pet protection system that's been launched specifically for pets. It very much is along the lines of, the sort of baby bassinets that are then perfectly secured and engineered for a vehicle. So go and check out tarvopets.com or your local health foods. It's a great place to go and see the kit in action. Yeah,
that definitely makes sense for me. I think that obviously if something's been tested and it offers that sort of protection, then I'm guessing that's it's just going to give people potentially a sort of extra layer and that peace of mind as well going forward. And I think that Karen made a good point there as well, in terms of sort of like the speed limit and as well, sort of staying in that sort of speed limits as well too. Just on that, before we sort of gone off piece before we sort of obviously sort of busy and that, but in terms of sort of like driving on, say, for example, the motorway, is there anything else we should take on board with that as well? Because obviously you got the motorway, you're going quicker. People are going to be probably going quicker than 30 miles, maybe 70. Does that have an impact as well? It's on the dog as well, like the speed of the car, in terms of how the dog sort of like the actual speed itself of the car's going. Does that sort of impact the animal too? Is there any research around that, or?
I mean, it
I
would
think
be
it's really
certainly.
important. Sorry.
Sorry, Karen. I would say as I'm going to defer to Karen on the amazing and interesting physics. But clearly, an animal is a sentient being that would be equally injured by fast speeds as any other living being. So, when we're driving at those sorts of speeds, I just think that everyone in the car, human or otherwise, should be restrained in a way that protects them. But Karen and the physics, you go for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's just interesting to think. It's like as as a sort of human, like in terms of when I'm saying going 70 mile an hour, you can sort of start to feel the velocity of the car, albeit with the newer cars now, not as much as the older cars, but you kind of get a sense of the car is going quicker, and it kind of heightens that sort of concentration. Not that it should do type thing, but the actual dog itself, in terms of the speed, the way they might react to sort of the car velocity. I know it's probably a question that's out there, but what's your take on it, Karen, as much as one can explain quite a complex area?
I think that the fundamental message is that driving is a safety critical task.
Yeah.
We do it as part and parcel of our daily lives, many of us, for work or other purposes. And it's fundamentally important to prepare to drive. And driver distraction is a contributory factor in many collisions on our roads. We now understand from the conversation this morning that securing pets does make a difference in terms of reducing chances of serious injury. So prepare to drive by considering everybody and everything in your vehicle to reduce distraction.
No, absolutely.
If you want.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. To be fair, I think that certainly I'd like to think most people do, but certainly from my own experience, sort of observing type thing, it's not always sort of common practice, and albeit it might sort of look cute, a dog like you said before with the sunglasses and popping out the window, that could be a potential disaster waiting to happen. So I want to thank you for coming on the show, Dr. Scott Miller and Karen McDonald. It's been great speaking to you. I'll certainly sort of check out and signpost people to the safety equipment if they do have a pet, because I think it's really important area. So thanks for your time once again, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.